Hi there. I'm Lelia Lewis, and welcome to another edition of New Day, New Beginning. Now, today we're going to be talking about God. God is not done with you yet. That's our title for today. So, my question for you today as we go through this lesson is: are you ready and willing to give God a try? Now, why? Because God created us. He created us all for a reason. And well, we all have a purpose and we all have talents and gifts, God given gifts, that is, and God given talents. And some of us take a little bit longer than others to recognize them or even discover them. But sometimes we prolong it because we ourselves think that, well, we may fail. You have some, I'm sure most of you do have many great ideas and thoughts, of creating something that could be beneficial to others. But you just aren't sure if you can do it. That's called what? Lack of self-confidence. Now's the time to remember that all the all the many promises that God made to us, to guide us, to protect us, to strengthen us, to give us courage and wisdom and discernment to make wise decisions. He gave wisdom. And the most of all, he said, what? Fear not, for I am with you. And God didn't give us a spirit of fear. And sometimes we forget that. I forget that. And we just have to take a risk because risk is what creates faith. And we can't forget that because we sometimes become discouraged. And then what? We're overtaken by fear. So let's talk about some of the reasons why we may have fear, and that creates failure. And one of the most prominent things is, we worry too much about what others may think, what others are saying, or whether they're even talking to other people about us. I mean, we spend far too much time looking for approval from total strangers. And I talk about this a lot because it never stops. Social media has us so engulfed in what this one said and that. Who cares? That's the point. And you let yourself care sometimes. And what about family and friends? I mean, we do rely on their support, and we always want their approval, but many times we don't get it because they sometimes think we're not capable. And that can become very discouraging. And I always think about the story of the temptations, the real temptations, back in the day temptations. But the guy who wanted to start that singing group, his father had no faith in him. And he says, "Oh boy, you need to just get a job. You're wasting your time," and so forth and so on. And he just kind of blew it off, the father. Get a job. You're wasting your time. You're taking up too much time with this, trying to do this music thing, and so forth and so on. And that is discouraging when your own family doesn't believe in you. And we don't want to be a disappointment to them because we value their opinion. But that doesn't make their opinion right because he just had that feel, I know I can do this. I know this is my gift. And even though his father never approved of him singing or none of that stuff, you just daydreaming. No, he wasn't. Because the Temptations were number one in the nation. My girl, I know you want to leave me. but I refuse to let you go. The temps are the temps nationwide because of his own mind. And then once his father saw his stardom and bought them a new house and got him a car and gave them everything they needed, now, of course, everybody wants to get on that bandwagon. So it's about family and friends and approval. Now, the other thing is being distracted. I mean, by things like something as simple as you're trying to do something or preparing for something, and somebody gives you a call and says, wants to have a long conversation. Oh, how you doing? I just want to talk to you for a minute. And they totally distract you from what you're really doing. It's not urgent. I mean, it's just not because they just want to have a chat. But sometimes we procrastinate because we're hesitant, we're unsure of ourselves, or even discouraged about what we're trying to put together. I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that because I can prepare a lesson and then I wonder if these are the right words. And sometimes I wonder, is it encouraging somebody? And I hope I do. Even if it's just one person, I've completed my task for that day. But that's very important to me. And sometimes it does make me fearful. But then I remember what? Fear will keep you from being all that God wants you to be. You're only seeing what you're seeing in the moment. God's already got it figured out. You just have to have the faith in Him. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 25 because I want to read a parable. And this was a parable, an example of one of Jesus' parables that he was telling the disciples about. Let's go to, I think it was chapter 25, Matthew chapter 25, and it's verse 14 and 15 through 18, I think. Okay, and this was about a man, and he had servants. And three of them he gave money to because he was going to go on a journey. Now, he gave one servant 5 talents. I guess that was $500. And the second servant, he gave 2 talents, talents, because that's what they called their money. And the third, he gave only one. Now, the point was, he was giving them money according to their service to him, how long they had been servicing him, were they a good servant? So, each got paid according to what they were worth for him. So in verse 16 through 23, it's telling you what they had received. And I just told you what they received. And then the servant who received 5 talents, he went on and he got doubled the money for his master. And the servant that had 2 talents, he also went on and doubled his master's money. But when it came to the third, who he gave only 1 talent to, verse 23, it says, he said, the Lord asked him, meaning the man of the house, the one that had received the 1 talent, he said in verse 25, well, I was afraid and I went and hid the talent in the earth. So instead of trying to make more with it, he buried it in the ground because he was scared. He didn't want to take a chance. He didn't want to take a risk. And the Lord answered him and said, called him a wicked and slothful servant. A wicked and slothful servant. Well, slothful means that you just, you lazy. That's what it amounted to. That's exactly what it amounted to. But the moral of the story is, in order to receive more blessing, you have to use your gift or talent, because then God already has given you what you need. So, in order to get more blessings, you have to give more blessings. So, whatever you use well in your life, God will give you more. Whether it's sharing your time, you could be sharing, somebody needs help. You could just be helping somebody. You could share your time, you can share your talents. Energy, helping them do whatever they need done, even monetarily, as long as you're helping someone else. Your blessings are going to come because that's what you're supposed to do. It's not about, oh, well, what your talent or your blessing is. Just help somebody else, and your own blessings will come back to you. You can't please God if you don't take chances. Taking chances creates faith. And if you don't take chances, well, then you don't really need faith, because you don't, what's it going to prove? What good is it going to do you? And if you're doing God's will, well, then you got to have faith, because faith is what keeps us going. How? Through our prayers, through our conversations with God. God created us to make a difference for others, not just for ourselves. Now, let's look at ways that say how to reduce the fear of failure. And that's the bottom line for most of us: failure. Now, we've already discussed, some of the things that create the fear, but now let's see what we can do to lessen the fear. And the first thing we do, first of all, what we do wrong is we spend too much time comparing ourselves to others. Period. And again, that comes back to what you see on TV, social media. Somebody's always telling you how to lose weight. Somebody's always telling you how to build up your body. Somebody's always telling you the best looking clothes to wear. Everybody's got ideas for you. But you know what? The people that are saying all this, well, the only time you see them is when they're already at their best. They tell you to be more prosperous, and that what kind of life you can have, and you want what you want, but they never tell you how much time or money, how much energy, how much dedication, how much did it take for them to get where they are to even tell you. They're not trying to make you do it. They may be telling you what's possible, but you don't go behind the scenes to see what all was put into that. That's where the work begins. Not what you see me here, but you don't know what I went through all week to get to this point. And what about the kind of life God wants you to have? Does anybody ever even think of that? Do you think of asking him for guidance and direction? Now, I'll ask you, do you? Think about it. I mean, know that everybody fails many times in their life, and that's just the way it is. Many times in many ways. And in Ecclesiastes 7:20, it says, for there is not a just man upon this earth that doeth good and sins not. Not one. Not one. Never has been, never will be. And that's simply telling us nobody's perfect. Now, the second thing is failure leads to success if you're humble and willing to learn from it. So, okay, I messed up. That didn't come out the way I wanted. So, even though it didn't come out the way you wanted, you think, "Oh, that bombed out. That was a failure." But you learned from it. I've learned from my mistakes. Oh, I can't do that anymore because that doesn't work. So, even though it's a failure literally, but it was a lesson. And let's see, Proverbs 28. Let's go there for 1 second. 28:13. Let's see. And that says, he that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them shall have mercy. And that's self-explanatory. I think that's self-explanatory. So that's simply saying the liars and the cheaters, that doesn't last forever. And you see that all the time. We see that right now in our everyday lives. People are always scamming and trying to connive and get money from people, but that don't last. That does not last. But it says those who confess their sins and ask for forgiveness shall receive God's mercy and his forgiveness. And that's what we are looking for. Mercy, forgiveness, and we want to go forward and do what we need to do. And then the other thing is now failure doesn't mean that it's final. That doesn't mean, oh, it's over, forget it. That's not what it means. Failure is only a failure and final if you give up. And here I am. I tell myself that so many times. You're only a failure if you give up. And then I'm not giving up. I won't. And in Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16, it says, for a just man falls 7 times and rises up again. Classic example of that is a baby. The baby learning to walk. Now that baby falls, I don't know how many times, and they could go from here to over there and fall 3 times and get up, and they'll go right back and try it again. Then, oh, excuse me, go back and try it again. Babies never stop trying. So I always use that, riding a bike. You know how I remember when I first got my bike, and so you fell a couple times, or you lost your balance, or you were wobbling or whatever. But in an hour or so, you were just cruising along. So that's all about getting back up. That's all about getting back up. Remember that saying, once you don't succeed, try again. Well, here we are. And that's what we have to do. I mean, and sometimes, it takes months and years. People work on projects for years. All these inventions and things that people have that worked for everybody. How do you think we got all the wonderful things we have? Because people didn't give up. That's what the scientists do, the creators of all these wonderful things that we have. But, so that's why it's important, even though the time may seem long, because to me, this seems long. It does. But when you do then all your failures become an education, because now all those times you failed, all the time the scientists failed, they just come back and do it over and over and over, because each failure is a learning process. It's an experience of going forward. Okay, I know I did three things wrong the first time, so I'll stop and do this, this, and this. And maybe next go around, you only make one mistake, but you don't quit. Because it took me months to get the podcast up, because I didn't have a clue, not a clue. And a lot of it was fear of failure. I'll be scared to touch this key, and scared because if it did something and went somewhere, I wouldn't know how to get it back. I ended up shutting down the machine and turning it back on, because I didn't want to keep hitting buttons. And it was all about fear. So, but I find that it took me a lot of Bible verses, reading them over and over and over again, just to get the strength that I needed. Reading the verses about strength and courage on a daily basis, and asking for strength and courage on a daily basis. God, give me strength to get through this day. God, give me strength. I need to do your perfect will. Show me what you want me to do. I could wake up with, Lord, what shall I do today? What shall I do about that? I mean, you can't get strength and courage from other people. That's not going to happen. First of all, because they don't know what you feel, and they don't know what you think. But God does. And that's why He can give us what we need whenever we need it and however much we need. And so, no matter what happens, you need to remember Romans 8:28. What does it say? God works for the good of those who love Him and who have been called according to His purpose. His purpose is the main two words in that verse. His purpose, not ours. Now, there are benefits of failure, and we've already discussed what some of them are. And like I said, it shows you what doesn't work. And that's important, because you need to know what doesn't work, or else you'll keep doing the same thing over and over. And what, until, and what did they always say? Why you keep doing the same thing over and over again when you already see it doesn't work? And that's true. And then it teaches us to analyze our mistakes. Think about it. Don't get mad and say, oh, never mind, I'm not going to do this. No, analyze it. Think about it. I wonder what I did wrong. Maybe if I had done this. Write it down if you have to, but you've got to learn to analyze your mistakes. And it makes us try different things to see what we're best at. Now, you can't say, oh, well, I want to be a singer. Well, you got to learn what you're best at. Now, if you can't carry a tune, you can't be a singer. If you don't have no rhythm, you can't be a dancer. So don't be looking at what somebody else is doing, thinking, oh, I could do that. I would like to do that. You can't be a musician if you're trying to blow a horn or a sax or whatever, and your fingers aren't nimble and you don't have enough wind in your body. That's a lot of breathing to be a horn player. And also, it makes you humble. Now you're not so busy judging somebody else or being critical of others, because you're not raising no Cain yourself. And that's very important. That is very important. We're so quick to criticize, and I have to catch myself sometimes because somebody could be doing something, or and you say, I could have done that. Maybe, but what are you doing that's beneficial to somebody else? It teaches you to be less critical of others and say, well, at least they're trying. At least their heart's in the right place. And we can learn from the mistakes of other people. If you see them doing something and you say, oh, now see, they should have done this, or I think it should have went that way, or I think they should have tried this, that makes a difference because you're learning from what somebody else did and it didn't work. So now I ask you, what have you left undone, or what have you not even started for fear of failure? Think about yourself. Think about what you haven't done because of fear. Now, we shared some of the reasons for fear, and we've discussed ways to reduce that fear, as well as the benefits of failure. But even with all this info, there's things we need to do first. And the very first thing we need to do is ask God for guidance and direction so we know we're doing His will. That's the very first thing. We can't even get started without His guidance, without His direction. He will give us all we need. God is not done with you yet. Give God a try. And my closing words for today are: failure isn't being unable to do something, failure is simply being unwilling to try. The choice is yours. You make your choice and give God a try. And I trust me, you'll be glad you did. And until next week, I'm Lelia Lewis. Thanks for joining me.